Hey guys, it's Malthor here once again, and with the latest changes to Mjolnir and all of the additional tools that are in the game these days compared to quite a few, I don't know, months, leagues, years ago, well, I can now finally live out my dreams of becoming Thor and throwing my Mjolnirs while leap slamming around at a pretty high pace. So previously, throwing a Mjolnir, not terribly efficient, even now, still not terribly efficient, but man do I love me some Spectral Throw and the meme value of throwing Mjolnirs and pretending to be somewhat like a Thor-esque character means that it's actually pretty solid right here. So with the latest patch or league, this one for Betrayal, Mjolnir and Cast on Crit both got significant buffs. They went from 0.5 second cooldown on the spells that could be triggered to 0.15 second cooldowns, and that's quite a large increase in the amount of spells you can shit out from both of them, and that makes it a lot smoother to get your single target rolling. For both Cast on Crit and Mjolnir, pack clearing and just general mapping wasn't too much of a problem even with a 0.5 second cooldown, but the single target was always going to be something left to be somewhat desired, since you just don't get that many spells going on single target with the proc rates, and it felt fairly bad compared to a lot of other builds. At this point you can have insane clear speed while at the same time maintaining some solid single target, and throwing with Spectral Throw, it's pretty tough because you do definitely have to stack a lot of attack speed. The base of the weapon attack speed is 1.15, so quite typically a Mjolnir character would use something like Cyclone or Molten Strike, and that just kind of lets you negate the bad feel of the attack speed. However, I have come to realize that you can kind of build around the bad attack speed with just enough jewel sockets at this point, since my character here has 7 jewel sockets, and that's where it's getting the majority of its damage and attack speed from, and then you can get it from various other sources, and you can actually just completely negate the shit feeling that Spectral Throw has, simply by getting quite a lot of attack speed and having a decent proc rate on your arcs, and then also running Cast on Crit arc with ball lightning in your chest. All in all, you don't really feel the bad or the slow attack speed anymore on Spectral Throw, because every one of your Spectral Throws counts for so goddamn much with the huge amount of arcs and ball lightnings that we're going to be sending out. Now the synergy here for the Cast on Crit and the Spectral Throw and the Mjolnir is that whenever you throw your Spectral Throw, your hammer, then Mjolnir is always going to be proccing arc, because I do have arc linked into my Mjolnir, so it triggers on hit. Every single time it hits, every 0.15 seconds, it will trigger out an arc. The Cast on Crit setup, however, is based entirely off of your crits, so sometimes you might whiff with a crit and then nothing's going to happen, but luckily we have Mjolnir to back it up, and that's going to be always proccing off arcs. And on top of that, whenever we shield charge, that is counted as a hit for Mjolnir as well. So just plain shield charging around is a huge offensive and defensive measure for this type of build, because you are also doing lots and lots of arcs well before you even start casting your Spectral Throws. So you can see the examples of that in this little safe house thing. As I'm shield charging around, for the most part, that's good enough to clear most crappy mobs. And then you throw out a few Spectral Throws, and then there's even more synergy with the fact that your Spectral Throws are going to be chasing you as you shield charge around, and then proccing behind you on loose enemies as well. So there is quite a lot of actual proper synergy here that does make sense, even though Mjolnir is a very slow weapon for a Spectral Throw type build, and it doesn't entirely make sense to begin with. As well as that, you do have to use a GMP as a failed link, rather, just to enable your Cast on Critting, so it might feel a bit inefficient, but there are definitely more than enough tools in the game to make things that aren't quite maximum efficiency still really good. So Cast on Crit Spectral Throw was one of my first ever Cast on Crits, and it was a sight to behold. It was just incredible. However, it never really had any single target, because how could it? It just wasn't good for single target with arc and ball lightning, the way those skills used to function. Right now, the ball lightning here, you can see, is for the most part just kind of aesthetics, but I've also got some life gain on hit with spells on my rings, and that lets me, with the ball lightnings, actually stay at about 100% life almost always, while getting really fast life recovery whenever you take big hits from enemies. And the arcs themselves are just going to be doing all of the work on the actual damage. And then when we go into single target, we'll swap GMP for slower proj, and that's when the ball lightning should start helping quite a lot of damage in its own right as well. So you'll have 2 arcs going off, you'll have a slower proj ball lightning, and all in all that should be pretty good for our single target. Now these are some of the delves and vile cities that you can see, and the build has been absolutely crazy for stuff like that. Very strong and solid, and this is even my hardest and deepest delve, something like 330, with a very unfriendly Prime Veil Ruins. You can see it's got some nasty ass mods, but I did manage to full clear all of the ones that I had on my map. Because the playstyle is so fluid, you just charge around, you can be pretty avoidance based if you want, and then if you chuck in a Call of the Brotherhood into the build as well, you'll freeze and shatter everything quite defensively. This is the only example of single target I have for this character thus far, because I haven't really procced anything else or gone out of my way for anything yet, and it's, I don't know, something like a tier 7 Elder. Absolutely nothing special, but it is just an example of what our single target's going to look like in this build. You have your slow proj, you throw a few fairly slow Mjolnirs, you got yourself both arcs going off, and then some ball lightnings as well. It should be good enough to take on a pretty solid Uber Elder in the end, I think. And then, of course, for the ad phases, it's actually really smooth because of the arcs always chaining around, and you have quite a few enemies to end up proccing your spells off of. It means you have a fairly reliable proc rate. The biggest issue I'm going to see for single target with the character is that you do have a fair amount of standing still for the slower progers and the spectral throws to go off, so it might be kind of dangerous to get your max proc rate out, but I'm hoping it holds up, and we'll see that in the next day or two. But for now, I want to show you guys what the character looks like. So the character here is currently now level 91, called Spectral Throyoyo. That's just kind of because of this little emote, which is my Mathal Oyoyo, and it's supposed to be a bit of a derpy Inquisitor type thing. So that's why the character's called that, but that's the basis of the name. It's level 91 and an Inquisitor, and it took us 20 hours to get to this point with a lot of crafting, a lot of gear, looking around. So it's been very fast in the leveling process, and that is because, well, Spectral Throw, when combined with Cast on Crit and Ball Lightning plus Arc, all the way through from level 38 onwards feels pretty insane. So at level 38, you pick up Cast on Crit, you run your Tabula with this exact setup over here, and you run a Mortem Morsu plus your Lycosidae, and you'll start just clearing through every map and farming very comfortably, as long as you've built your crit up throughout those levels up to 38. Wear as many crit things as you can, like your Malagaros, a couple of diamond rings, try and maintain power charges, run a blasphemy, or a ring with Curse on hit Assassin's Mark, and you should be able to start spectral throwing right from level 38. Now up until then you're using something like Stormbrand, Arc, Spectral Throw to level with, and then from then on you transition into this, and at about level 68 is when I put on Mjolnir, because it does have a very steep strength and int requirement, so you do have to go out of your way throughout your gear and your passive tree to try and get as much strength as possible, and I didn't really want to mess with that until about level 68, 70, when I'd be putting on most of my real gear. So you can see the strength of the Mjolnir here is that you do have socketed spells get procced on hit, triggered on hit, and it does have a 0.15 second cooldown, similar to the cast on crit over here. So comboing both of those together, you do have individual cooldowns for the arcs over here and here, so both the arcs can proc separately on their own terms, and then I've also got Ball Lightning proccing every other hit, because, like I said, comboed with the life gain on hit from Shaper Diamond Rings over here that I managed to roll using Aetheric and Pristine Fossils. I think this one was actually Chaos spammed, this one was Aetheric and Pristine. That's the life mod that you're looking for there. Paired with your Ball Lightning, it actually keeps you up pretty well for defensiveness. So the character in essence ends up being somewhat similar to the Poet's Pen one I did at the end of Delve, but it should be much more reliable in its movement and its tankiness. So with this build, I can afford to go a bit more defensive heavy, 6,300 life at this point and room for more, while also I have shield charge attached to fortify, so fortify is up almost 100% of the time, and while I'm shield charging around, I actually also proc my Mjolnir arc at the same time, so doing quite a lot of damage while also being somewhat defensive. So I feel like it's a slightly more versatile defensive Poet's Pen version, whereas the Poet's Pen had a lot more damage because if you look at my path of building, each arc on my chest will hit for about 91k, each arc on my Mjolnir hit for about 100. The Poet's Pen was hitting for about 180k, so it's almost double, but this one does actually factor in a cast on crit chest, which the other one didn't, so I'm proccing out twice as many arcs. So overall, it should be somewhat of a similar DPS rate to the Poet's Pen, but more versatile in that you can shield charge around, get some fortifies, and my life gain is a lot better with this build, a lot more sustainable. On top of that, I am also running Arcane Surge, Curse on Hit, Stormbrand, and Warlord's Mark. So whenever I need to, I am charging around, pressing R, and dropping Stormbrand on enemies that gives me Warlord's Mark for the extra leech for mana and life, and I've also got some life leech from the Itziri Flask. Now the Mjolnir itself has Arc attached to Power Charge on crit and added lightning, and Power Charge on crit is just easy Power Charge sustained throughout mapping, but ultimately when you go for single target, I will be replacing that for Elemental Focus, just because it's a lot more damage, while this setup doesn't change at all, and I'll probably end up doing something like this over here, so that I get power charges from the Stormbrand for single target. I won't any longer have Arcane Surge, but I don't think that's the biggest deal, because power charge on crit is just a lot stronger for us. You can see that it's not the easiest thing in the world to get crit up on a weapon that doesn't have any base crit, so we're at 37 without any power charges, rocking about 50% with power charges up, and then the Diamond Flask has the crit roll here, and as well as that, Diamond Flask gives you a lot of crit. So when we look at our actual crit in Path of Building with everything rolling, we're looking at something like 77%, almost 78, which is pretty damn good for a Spectral Throw to be non-stop proccing your crits, your cast on crits, and that's roughly what it looks like throwing your Mjolnirs, except I do have a MTX on at the moment, so you are throwing the hammer as is per Spectral Throw. With this silly little MTX without it, it just looks like a big ass Mjolnir that you're throwing, and I really like that effect, but it's just never been terribly practical. So like I said, I managed to make it practical this time by stacking a lot of jewels that have attack speed. So attack speed with maces, attack speed with one-hand shields, you can do attack speed with one-hand melee weapons as well, but for the most part, the attack speed with maces roll goes up to 8%, so that's what we're looking to get on the gear. Now it isn't the easiest thing in the world to gear because like I said, the jewels are pretty specific. You want a Watcher's Eye with Wrath and crit, so that you get your crit up, and ultimately you do need a fair amount of strength. It takes a fair bit to get to 414. Some of that goes from the passive tree, but you do need strength elsewhere. So we got strength on boots, on belt, got a bit of strength, or quite a lot of strength on the amulet, and so you do have to stack a bit of strength here or there, so the gearing does become somewhat specific in the end. So all in all, I can say you should probably also be able to avoid Mjolnir if you want entirely, and not run a Mjolnir plus cast on crit setup. You could purely just run a really good Gemini Claw, for example, that's multi-modded or just with lots of attack speed. So your proc rate should increase a lot that way by going a 1.8 speed sort of Gemini Claw. You can then transfer a lot of your attack speed from the passive tree and the jewels into just pure damage. You get a lot more crit that way. You might even be able to do a hits can't be evaded craft onto it, so you can avoid the Lycosidae altogether, and just focus entirely on your chest setup, which I think should be pretty strong anyway, as you'll find out if you're leveling with your Mortem Morsu anyway. So that'll also probably free up a 3 or a 4 link that you can then chuck in a Vile Stormcall for to help your single target out. So I don't think Mjolnir is strictly necessary, but for the fun of the build and the way we're trying to become Thor to throw out hammers, it's kind of necessary to do this entire uncomfortable setup. I'm not sure I'd entirely recommend you guys go out and copy this because Mjolnirs are going to be expensive, and then so is the rest of the setup to try and piece everything together to be truly great. But if you can be fucked doing it, I'd say it does pay off quite well. It's very fun to map with and very fun to delve with especially. Not quite sure how it's going to go on single target if you don't have a Mjolnir. I'll probably try that out for you guys by the end of the character, just so I can let you know if Mjolnir is strictly necessary, or if you can go just a pure Spectral throw setup, because you'd get a lot more attack speed and it would feel a lot more fluid if you end up doing that. Now the chest you can see here has some spell crit, some resist, some life, and +1 active skill gems. The +1 isn't at all necessary. I chaos spammed a chest for quite a lot until I get spells have crit, because the spells crit is very important to your base crit. As you can see, Arc has about 5 crit to start with. The additional 1.4 means that it adds to the base crit of the Arc, and then all of your crit scales off of that. So it's pretty important to have some base crit here, or you can go Lore Weave just for overall defensiveness and all that. But after that, some resist, some life is good, and I managed to exalt +1 active gems onto this thing, which makes it a pretty nutty chest. However, you don't need that shit because for the most part, this setup is doing maybe half our damage, while this is doing the other half. So +1 on this is maybe a 4 or 5% DPS increase. It's not that crucial to have. As far as a helm is concerned, the reduced spectral throw projectile deceleration means that this just has a bit more sort of hang time and rotation, so when it's actually out there it should be getting maybe an extra little proc or swing in. I don't think it's super crucial, but if you can get one of these, that's fine. A +1 arc chain is fine too. Lots of helm enchants for this sort of build, some ball lightning stuff too if you really want. And then gloves I managed to craft with some insanity essence, so that you have 16% more attack and cast speed, and then have 12% increased attack speed as well, just so that our shield charge goes around a whole lot faster. And this is the fastest shield charge I think I've ever had, so it's still very doable to make a pure shield charge movement for a character with quite a lot of attack speed scaling, and then some insanity crafts as well. Other than that, the gear is, well, as you'd expect, just a bunch of resists and life and stuff like that. And it's not too steep of a requirement to get, except for the rings getting with life gain on hit, plus a lot of life may end up being kind of tough to do. However, the rest of the gear should be fairly stock standard. When you're building the character, I think the way I pathed was just straight up through here, grabbing these, and then you just start traveling, grab the power charge as soon as you can, and then go to the assassin tree or shadow tree as soon as you can to get the crit nodes, so that you can start cast on critting as soon as possible. My next few nodes are hopefully going to be up to here. That will take me to about level 94, 95, so we'll see if I can manage to keep playing this character for that long. So far it's been a lot of fun, and I definitely want to keep doing a lot more. However, if it just plain sucks in the end game, then maybe it won't be that fun to take to level 93, 94. So far so good though, and I definitely think it's got the potential to get there. It started out as kind of a meme idea and a bit of meme value for just throwing Mjolnirs, but it turned out to be pretty great when you can piece together all the right things, and hopefully just plain Spectral throw without a Mjolnir is something that has potential too, and I will explore that in the next day or two for you. For now guys, that's the character. Hope you enjoyed the build and the video, and I'll see you next time.